G'day and welcome back to Critical AFL on YouTube for tonight's Derby review. After what I thought was a pretty watchable performance from the Eagles that really exceeded expectations, I think all things considered. For tonight's episode, I'll be covering a brief overview of the match, who our best players were, including promising performances from the younger part of our squad, before finally my key takeaways from the match. So going into tonight's match, I think it's fair to say that there was a lot of potential for tonight's game to go a lot worse than how it played out, or just the general outcome on the scoreboard when the final siren sounded could have been a lot uglier. Fremantle are fielding one of the strongest sides in their history right now, and they're coming off a really impressive win against the top of the ladder Pies, while West Coast is fielding a squad where probably more than half of the talent are still developing towards the players that they'll become at some point. For the record, I'm glad every youngster is out there playing at the moment. But it's just a preface that today's derby had the potential to go absolutely haywire, which it didn't. From the first bounce, everybody attacked the game from West Coast the way they needed to. I did hear McWalter talking about pressure being one of the key factors going up against Fremantle through the week. And the approach looked like it worked. We got the first goal of the game. We're in the contest for most of the night, excluding what I saw as two separate bursts of goals that ended up making most of the margin in the end. There was one burst of four quick goals at the end of the first quarter, and then another four in a row at the start of the last quarter. They really stood out against the overall arm wrestle that we managed. I'll admit that a lot of inaccuracy from Fremantle probably kept other patches of the game from scoring more heavily. But overall, I still enjoyed watching the full four quarters of an even contest just across the ground at least. They got us really bad in clearances tonight, both centre and even worse stoppage clearances around the ground. But we seemed pretty well set up for that, so it didn't appear that that was a disaster stat for us as far as the outcome of the game went. Personally, I'll say it again, I was pretty happy with the result. I enjoyed the positives that were there right up until the final siren, and I think that kicking the last three goals of the game also helped just to end it on a good note, especially I think after the scoreboard did manage to really slip away from us for a while there. Our best players were a bit more senior tonight, which on one hand, it's actually a bit of a relief, to be honest, which I'll go into as I go through the players and explain why I say that. At the very top of the list for me, though, was Liam Baker. And I don't always go off the stats sheet when I pick my list of best players, but I would say that if you missed the game today, I reckon you'd probably still be able to figure out how well he played and that he was our best player just looking at the stats that he put up on the board. He finished the match with 24 disposals, which was our second most behind Tim Kelly. He also kicked two goals and he laid a massive 10 tackles. All of them were really influential. Actually, I remember saying for one of them that he latched onto Shy Bolton like a barnacle just at the fall of the ball from an inside 50 late in the game, which it looked like that ball, Bolton's crumbing front and centre was going to just get away. And then, within like a split second, he was just latched onto. Looked like a barnacle to me anyway. He wasn't getting off. His typical physicality, that's Baker we're talking about again now. It went up a level again tonight, which I think was really needed in quite a rough derby. A bit more spite in this one than we've seen for a while. 11 of his possessions were contested out of the 24, but he was also going at 79% efficiency with the ball in hand. So he was making all of those disposals count too. My next best tonight, which is why I said earlier it was a bit of a relief to see who played well, was Tim Kelly. I don't think it's escaped anyone that he's had a pretty bad year for form, which I think has carried a bit of concern that he will no longer be a player that we can count on just to lead the side while we develop the young guys. There is a gap between our senior guys and our young guys, especially the mids, where the senior guys are really on their way out too soon. And you can see that's probably because, Shuey had to retire early and Yo's just constantly been riddled with injuries. And the young guys, they're showing all that talent, but they're probably still 1 to 2 years, most of them 2 years at least away from being the guys that don't need to lean on senior players. So it was a relief in that sense, seeing guys like Kelly stepping up again tonight. He was right up there before anybody pounces on this as just one good game. I would like to point out that I said, I think a couple of weeks ago in his waffle match where he came back, that he looked like something was different, and he wasn't just playing well because he was back in the waffle and he's an AFL player, but it looked like he was moving the way he did when he was at his best again. So track that little review down if you don't believe me, but yeah, he's looked a lot cleaner with his hands in that game, and even in the first half against Richmond last week, and then tonight it looked like it all came together. I'll admit he's not the complete player because his speed on the dirty defense still catches him, but right now we need disposal winners, and he was our top possession winner with 26. Like I said, which is really important lately, just because we've struggled to have anyone rack up the numbers for us all year. Also, 16 of those possessions were contested. And most importantly was his slick hands that seemed to be back. So for me, his 15 handballs were probably much more important to us than the 11 kicks that he got, just because of how cleanly he was opening the space up for us in the contest. He also kicked 2 goals, which is a nice little cherry on top in case anyone's not happy with the rest of the information I gave you. Also for me, I thought Harley Reed deserves to be considered right up there. His impact on the game in the first half was huge. I actually saw a couple of his effective don't argues were back again tonight after it looked like he put those in the rack for most of this year. And I think to finish with 15 disposals and 2 goals was really impressive considering it was very obvious that he was Fremantle's number one target all night. The amount of off-the-ball hits that he copped was really quite bad. And I've got no doubt that Fremantle came into this match thinking that it would be worth doing to put him off his game, just with, I suppose, his track record for biting, which I didn't think he did personally. Outside of that, outside of my top 3, I thought Ryan Marrick had one of his best games in a while. Tom McCarthy continues to look like one of our classiest players, which still blows my mind that he's a mid-year draftee to be handing him that title. Brady Hoff also did a really good job on Caleb Sarong, which I think probably went a long way towards Fremantle not having their way with us tonight. From my list of promising performances, I think both Rhett, Bazo and Sandy Brock both really impressed me. I'm not saying that they won their battles or that they dominated, but after Harry Edwards was pulled out of the match just a couple of minutes before the first bounce, Bazo was up against, I think, physically bigger key forwards than he usually gets matched up on. And he looked a lot more comfortable with that role than he has in all of his other AFL matches that he's been, I think, always thrown into underdone. Sandy Brock, I thought the same. He plays to an AFL standard, and I actually have a really strong suspicion that he's going to be putting on a heap of muscle over the next pre-season and end up being an absolute steal for us. I think I've got this image in my head of some of the photos and vision I saw of him when he came to West Coast just to train on with us. And he looked a lot lighter than he does now. So I think he is taking his pre-seasons really big in the weights room. So watch that space. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back looking like the Terminator next year. Even though he's had some bigger performances in the last month, I still think I'm allowed to put my current favourite young guy, Clay Hall, in the promising performances category. He started with a lot more of the footy when he was on the ball in the middle. And even though he got a lot less of it from the wing, he still did a heap of really impactful things with his 14 disposals for the match. I'm sure everyone can picture him taking 2-3 bounces down the wing inside 50 later in the game when I say that. But anyway, that pretty much brings me to my key takeaways now. And my first key takeaway, which is the same message I keep taking away from a really bad year on paper, and that is that we've taken huge steps forward in our development. Unlike some of the beltings we were on the end of in the last few years before this year, we're actually losing with a side that's only getting better with every game of AFL exposure that they're having. The side that's out there competing at the moment has so many young up-and-coming guys who are racking up just really, really valuable AFL games. And you can see that they're already banking that experience every week that goes by, and that they'll take that into the next preseason and then next year with them. I just look at all the first, second and third year players right now who are going to have a huge impact on the future of this club. And I just think every one of those guys will be having an even bigger impact in 2026. So probably leads on to what you'd say is a second key takeaway. Equally future driven. It's that we are competing right now without our best players, 2 of who should be fully fit and at their best in round 1 next year. So that would be Jake Waterman and Elliot Yeo. And I know Yo's recovery timeline's blown out constantly all this year, and he's been injury prone in general for years now. But I do think that without the urgent push to return this year, that he should be fully fit, going through a slower program, a more well-paced one, and be fully fit at the start of next year. So I guess the combined message of those two key takeaways is I think we're looking at our last year of being really deep at the bottom of the ladder. I'm not saying that we're going to just shoot our way up, but these bottom two finishes, if it were to happen next year, it won't happen the same way. It'll be with a fair few more wins and with a much more competitive side, even though I think we've been pretty competitive this year. So yeah, probably a disgustingly positive video from me following what still was a pretty big loss to Fremantle in the derby today. But I personally enjoyed the game and have taken a lot out of what I saw. So hopefully everybody's trying to get the most that they can out of every round for the rest of this season, because there aren't many games left for us now. As always, if you're subscribed to the channel, then hopefully I'll see you all again tomorrow for my waffle review, which I do need to mention does include my regular predictions for who will be coming in and out of the side next week. And as always, cheers until then.